I just got back from a trip to Taiwan. I was there for Lunar New Year to see friends and family, and I was very lucky to get my hands on this Intense Tazer MX alloy. We'll be going over its specs and everything you need to know, including my first ride impressions. Welcome to Frankie's eMTB channel. Hope everyone is having a great week. And man, what a refreshing trip back to Taiwan. It felt so good to be reunited with friends and family. Taiwan, specifically the Taichung area, central Taiwan, had a huge impact in my life. It is where I met my wife, Ellen. It is where I first started mountain biking. And it is also where I landed my first cycling industry job. I was very fortunate to be able to ride this Intense Tazer MX for a few days. And man, this bike is confident, inspiring. Even though trails around Taiwan are tamed compared to what we have here in the States, nevertheless, I was able to get a feel for the bike's characteristics. So before we get into how this bike rides, let's dive into the specs. The Tazer alloy is a full 60-61 aluminum construction with 170 millimeters of travel up front and 155 millimeters of travel in the rear. It's running on a mullet setup, 27.9 as they call it these days. It's got the Shimano EP801 with 85 Newton meters of torque with 500 watts of peak power, 630 watt-hour battery, Öhlins RXF 38 M2 fork, Öhlins TTX 22M coil with 548 pound spring, TRP Evo shifter derailleur combo, TRP DHR Evo for the brakes, E13 E-Spec wheels, all at an MSRP of $6,499. A very solid price for a high-end suspension build. Now let's take a look at the geometry. Here are a few key numbers for a size medium. Reach 438 millimeters, head tube angle 64.4 degrees, chainstay 450 millimeters, wheelbase 1,231 millimeters. SoCal riders, need a mechanic to work on your bike? Give my boy CJ at Faust Tuning Works a DM at _inside FTW on Instagram for an appointment. He's hands down the best mechanic I know, works on bikes, trucks, RC cars, and he also welds. So if you need anything done, DM CJ on Instagram at _inside FTW. Let him know Frankie sent you and you'll get $50 off of your first service. All right, so let's talk about the sizing and the fitting. I'm about 5'8", 170 pounds, and I found this medium size to be perfect for my build. The stock 800 bars are a bit too wide for me, and cutting that 800 bar down to 770 would have been perfect. The stock 540 pound spring, I found it wasn't too stiff for my weight, although I wish I would have taken it to more chunky terrain so I can, further test the shocks. But I tried my best given the terrain that I had in Taiwan. So let's talk about the ride characteristics of the Tazer MX. Earlier I said that the Tazer is very confident, inspiring. And what I meant by that is that right when I got onto the bike, you can feel how planted it felt. Although the trails out here in central part of Taiwan are not exactly chunky, but I tried smashing it through some routes at higher speeds, and this beast just plowed right through everything. It excels at the steep stuff, and it really reminds me of my Norco Range VLT. It's like point this bike in one direction and it'll go. The bike will take care of everything else. It wants to go straight. The bike does feel a bit clumsy. It's not as poppy or maneuverable as my Turbo Levo, but that can be attributed to the 170 millimeter Öhlins RXF 38 millimeter stanchion. It is bigger and beefier than the 36 millimeter stanchion, so maybe having a 36 on that fork could prove to be a little bit more maneuverable. But I am 100% confident that this bike paired with this fork can pretty much eat up any chunk that comes your way, regardless you're in North America, you're in Europe, you're in Australia. I mean, this fork paired with that TTX 22M shock, this thing just feels extremely supple and extremely planted. I was able to find a few jumps and a few drops, and this setup pretty much ate all the drops that came its way. And for a big bike, it climbs fairly well. It tends to lift the front wheel just a little bit when I give it some torque, but I was able to handle any of the steep climbs that came my way with pretty much ease, shift my weight a little bit forward, and that reduced the front wheel from popping up. So here are some of my thoughts if you're trying to purchase the Intense Tazer. The price tag on this bike, Tazer MX, starts at $6,499. It is a legit price. I mean, if you're the type of person who just wants to shred straight out of the box and you don't want to spend a penny more, this is the bike for you to get. Let's just say you're able to find the same deal on a 2022 Turbo Levo comp alloy for $5,500 or a Turbo Levo Expert at $6,999. The components you'll find on the Turbo Levo is far less superior than the one that you'll find on the Intense Tazer MX or the Intense Tazer Alloy S. The Öhlins package that is on this bike is superb. Yes, you got a smaller battery, but you won't need to spend a penny more for upgrades. You have one of the best suspension that you can get out there. And for those that are looking to save even more, check out the Tazer Alloy Expert at $4,999. It has the EP6, which is essentially the same motor as the EP801, but heavier with a steel casing instead of the magnesium casing that's found on the 801. It has the same torque at 85 Newton meters. It has the DVO suspension setup, front and rear, and I've been a fan of DVO since I put my rear shocks on. The performance of the DVO is superb, and I'm willing to bet Tazer will perform like a trophy truck with that DVO setup. The only drawback to this build is that it has the 504 watt-hour battery. Honestly, if you're riding on local trails, 504 watt-hour is still plenty. However, you can get a battery upgrade if you wish. Intense does not offer it on their website, but Shimano does sell that 630 watt-hour battery, which is cross-compatible with the 801 motor. This is one of those bikes that even at the base model tier, the components are very, very well thought out and priced very well. Plus, it is completely ready to shred from the factory, regardless of the tier. You know, in a few other bikes that I've talked about, the base model tiers, I mean, with some of the RockShox base tier components, it is really hard for me to just say, hey, you can shred out of the box, because even when I tried some of those base components, it's hard for me to just let it go. It's hard for me to get a full potential out of these base components. So I really think Intense is doing the right thing and speccing some great components at great value so you can just enjoy this bike out of the box. Use my affiliate links in this video to get your mountain bike components and gear. Any purchases made through my affiliate links will directly help this channel. And you can also support me on Patreon, $3 a month, to help me get to full-time YouTube status. And that is the goal for this year at Frankie's eMTB channel. And with that, hope you all have enjoyed this week's video. Have a great rest of the week. And as always, stay electric. Peace.